How to read when you hate reading. This is something that is very important to embody. Reading is a habit that unlocks everything for you. So, let me tell you a little bit about my story. Because for me, beyond, the books that we're forced to read in school, in formal schooling, I can probably count on one, maybe two hands, the amount of books that I've read in my entire life, all the way up until age 19. And it was only until I discovered my first self-help book, Atomic Habits by James Clear, did I really open my mind up to the world of self-help and to the world of reading. I think that for those that hate reading and for those that find reading as a waste of time, simply haven't found information that is powerful enough for them to learn how to read. Especially today in our culture, in the current information climate, where all of our information is just quick snippets and YouTube videos and TikToks, right? Quick blog posts, tweets, quick messages we shoot between each other. It's very quick. And many of us have not developed the skill to have the patience of actually sitting down and crunching on some difficult to understand information. When I started learning self-help material, I didn't read books. I was actually ideologically against it, where I did not at all want to, read words on the page. I didn't even have the skill to have my eye follow like from one line to another. Like I would finish from the line to the right, I would finish from the line to the right, and when I looked to the left, I would lose my spot. I would have to look. I would be reading like the same line over and over again because I just didn't have that ability for my eyes to jump to the correct line. And that is a skill that I had to develop and how I did that was just through massive amounts of volume. But let me tell you first how I, got to reading like actual words on the page. Because where I started was I would just listen to audiobooks. And for the person that can just do that, that's okay. Start there, right? For the person that doesn't have the patience yet to sit down with a book and just, discipline yourself to read, it's okay. Just accept where you're at. That's where you're at right now, right? There's still so much useful information and insights that you can apply to your life through consuming the information in the book through an audio. And I'm a very big firm believer. Like, some people would say like, you didn't really read a book if you listen to it on audio. And to that I say, look, if they got the same insights and if they applied the information, what difference does it make, right? Now I will say though, when you actually read those words, your brain, your mind is forced to process each individual word. And that has you retain so much more information. It's incredible. So the question becomes, how did I get to a point now where I'm reading usually at about 2 hours a day minimum, where I'm reading physical, words, like, not listening, but reading. And the turning point for me was when I realized that the best information is in those really dense books, where you actually need to sit down and take time to crunch on each individual insight. For me, I also learned that taking notes is such a useful technique to actually get the information into my mind. I think when it comes to reading books, too many of us are just chasing to the finish, where we're not really reading for ourselves. We're just reading such that we can say we read a book, or so we can say we read 50 books or whatever number you want to put behind your name. But, we're racing towards getting to the end of the book without having a bias towards actually learning what's in that book. I think a lot of us need to understand that it's way more valuable to slow down such that you can actually digest the information at your own pace. Because that's where you're actually going to learn something, and that's where it's actually going to be life-changing for you. That takes a lot of removal of ego to even do. It's almost like when you're working out. I'm not sure if it's Mike Mentzer or Tom Platz or someone where, the way they would work out is that they would do every set, super slowly, such that they got like the maximum amount of muscle tears micro tears throughout the entire muscle, right? Maximum contraction throughout the entire movement, right? And that's what really allowed for maximum strength, right? Where when you're doing those kind of movements, you're leaving the ego at the door. And, in the same kind of thinking, you want to leave your ego at the door, or leave your ego at the cover, when you open that book. You don't want to necessarily have these goals. I mean, yes, it's awesome, and I actually do have goals like reading 4 books a month, which I'm barely even hitting one right now, just because I'm really leaning towards just taking time to really digest the information and write about, take notes about it, and then write about my notes and see where I can apply it, and doing the exercises and really thinking it through. Because this reminds me of when I first read the book Atomic Habits, right? Going back again to my first self-help book, where I really opened myself up to the world of just self-help and how much information that was out there to revolutionize my life. And we may think the more books we read, the better. That is true, but the more books you actually read, not the more books that you just makes it to the finish, but the ones that you actually take time to do the emotionally difficult thing, which is taking time to digest that information and to actually apply it to your life and slow it down, and then review pieces that you didn't that you need to review, that you don't remember too much. That's actually reading a book, right? And so, when we connect this to the whole big topic of this video here, is how the hell do you learn how to love reading, really? So the couple things is you need to read more. Naval Ravikant actually said this: read whatever you like to read until you learn to love reading. And that's important as well. And that was for me, right? So for me, I started with the audio. And you just get that volume in to the point where you earn your blue belt in reading. And what I mean by that is there's a great metaphor with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So there's, their belt system, and they say it starts to get really fun at about the blue belt, right? And that can take, 3 years to get to, rolling every single day as a white belt, but eventually, by the time you get to your blue belt, you will memorize all the moves, you'll have a massive set of experience, then you'll really be able to play with it, and it'll start to become fun for you, right? So when you want to learn how to love reading, and especially reading the physical pages, cultivate your interest around the information that you want. You want to build a case for it. You want to start to teach yourself just how much valuable information is in those pages, right? And then when you teach yourself that, like, holy shit, like, this will just help me so much and there's just so much valuable information, then you'll be naturally inclined to take the time every single day to, read 2 hours a day. You'll read enough to the point where you actually just enjoy reading. I'm still at that point where I don't enjoy reading necessarily as much, but I can see, like, when I've got like 10,000 hours of reading in, I will be able to enjoy reading a lot more. I mean, I already kind of do because I'm reading about something I'm interested in, and that's very important. But even right now when I'm reading, it's, takes time. And so having that case built behind you is like, well, I want, the more I read, the more my life improves, right? And as well as just being willing to, like, with that behind you, be willing to, like, suffer towards this ideal of where you are one to read books. The most valuable people, if you want to be a top 1%er, you have to read books. Just going to see what else I can say here. So to recap, read what you like to read until you learn to love reading. Read what you're interested about. Take time every single day such that you're doing it every single day do something to the point you love it. Make a routine. If you can only start with audiobooks, start there, right? I'm going to pause it and see if I come up with anything else. All right. So beyond that, with the recap, really leave your ego at the door when you open a book and just read for yourself, read for the understanding, read such that, this one book can transform you. This is the last thing I want to say. So when I first read Atomic Habits by James Clear, I applied it. I actually want to read it again because I read it back in 2019, and I just ran with cue, craving, response, reward. I just ran with the 4 things there, and I revolutionized my life. And that's ideally how you want to have every book turn out for you. You want every book to be a quake book, is what they call it, where, like, it completely revolutionizes a part of your life. And so I let Atomic Habits revolutionize my life. I just listened to the book, right? And I looked at the worksheets and whatnot, and then I did those worksheets, and that's what changed my life. I'm thinking about when I'm writing my book, and when I have my audiobook come out, the audiobook version, I'm just gonna have those worksheets for that, person that was like me, that wasn't able to read the pages yet, but still wanted to change their life. And so I was the one that actually used that book and changed my life. And it changed my life so much that I was like an ideologue. I was telling everybody about it, how awesome that book was. And what I didn't realize was that an idea is only as good as your execution behind it. And so for me, my execution was solid. And I look at my father, and he read the same book, and he even bought, like, this special journal to track your habits. And he didn't even write one thing in there. He didn't create any habits. He didn't create any tracking systems. And so he didn't put any action behind what he read. And so I can even question now whether the fuck he read it or not. Of course he did, but he didn't really read it because he didn't apply it. He didn't let it change his life. He didn't really extract the juice out of it. He didn't do the emotionally difficult thing, which is actually putting it into practice. You know, I believe that if you read 10 high quality books and apply them all to the 10th degree, you will get way farther than the guy that reads 100 books, even if they're all high quality. Because 99% of your results is going to come from action, right? It's a way bigger lever when you're using coming from a place of action rather than just coming from a place of theory. You know, if you're just constantly giving yourself theory, and zero action, you're going to become like everybody else in self-help, where they do fucking nothing, and then they blame self-help for not working. It's like, no, you didn't do any fucking action. You know, the toxic form of self-help. Yeah, you know what's toxic is developing a reading habit to the point, and then not actually developing an acting habit, where you're acting out the ideas that you read about. And so with that, you know, if you really want to build a case for yourself as to why you want to read and why you want to motivate yourself to discipline yourself to actually read the fucking words rather than just like the audiobooks. Because if you're going to reach this point where you're just going to read one audiobook after another or one book after another, and you're not going to apply any of it, and you're just going to be continually demotivated. It's going to be a continually demotivating process, because you're not, you know, you're putting in all this effort, yet you're not reaping any of the fruits that this information has to offer because you have no action behind it. So I much rather, instead of reading, 50 books in a year, I'd rather read 10 books and apply them really fucking well, right? And so this reminds me of an idea where there's nothing better, there's no better investment than like buying like a course, like a very well selected course, and then like completing it to the nth degree, right? Same thing with a book. There's no better investment than like buying a very well selected book that will, pinpoint your specific problem and give you the most leverage to create the most positive change in your life. So don't just be all willy-nilly with what books you read. Go for the books that will really help you and really commit to taking that daily action such that you can actualize these ideas that these books introduce to you. And when you're starting to experience the fruits of these ideas by taking action, that's when you're going to be motivated to read more and more. Because you're like, damn, like, all the power to me. I just need to start to read more and more. So with that, hopefully that has been informative for you. And I would like to thank you for watching. And I will see you in the next one.